Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. And please allow me to wish all the World Muslim Communities Council from Abu Dhabi worldwide a very blessed Ramadan Kareem. Really a generous blessing during this month of Ramadan for all our Muslim members. United in this council, very important, established in Abu Dhabi, that reaches out Muslims from Asia to Africa to Europe to United States and to Latin America, and of course Australia. So I really wish the blessings of this holy month of Ramadan to you all, and to our prayers and our actions and also our fasting. May Allah accept it in this very blessed occasion. The topic I would like to share with you is a topic of course, fasting of the months of Ramadan for Muslims, but with a specific special perspective, which is fasting and dialogue. And fasting and dialogue, especially in Europe or in the West, as the context of our ritual devotion and our fasting as Muslims changes if, of course, it is a Muslim minority in Europe rather than a Muslim majority in Asia or in Africa. And of course, I would like to link the value of fasting to dialogue, to interreligious dialogue, which is one of the core topics of the World Muslim Communities Council, in order to facilitate and develop a better understanding and relation and respect of Islam and of Muslims, also with other religious communities such as the Christian community, Christian Catholic, Christian Orthodox, Christian Protestants, but also the Jews, the Hindus, and the Buddhists. So it's also an occasion for brotherhood, for fraternity, and this is also another key word in Abu Dhabi, where the Sheikh Ahmed al-Tayyib, Imam al-Azhar, has signed with Pope Francis this human fraternity document, which is a very important also inspiration for fraternity among believers of different religious identities within the Abrahamic monotheism, and also with a specific grammar that links us through Abraham to the Ilm al-Tawheed, to the science of unity of Allah and His science and His holiness as believers and religious citizens also in Europe. So that would be what I will try to mention. And of course, as most of you can remember, the reference we quote from the Quran when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمَ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. It is also a reference where the order of siyam, of fasting, is given to Muslims as it was given to the communities before Islam. So there is a special link that allows fasting to be something that is specific to us, to our Muslim community, in terms of methodology, approach, symbolism, interpretation, and also implementation. But the principle of fasting is common also to other religious communities before Islam, such as Christianity, where fasting is present, such as Judaism, where Jews are practicing as well fasting, but also in other non-Abrahamic communities, such as Hinduism or Buddhism, where their believers have the practice of fasting according to their own doctrine. So there is a challenge here which is very interesting. You have a common principle, a common ritual, a common fasting, but the variety and the differences of rules, grammars, practice, and interpretations are of course different. So we have to manage this unity in diversity, and we can recognize the principle of fasting, but also respect the difference of fasting in other communities as well, which is part of the mystery and the secrets of fasting, of Ramadan, but also, if I may say, of Islamic religion in terms of managing what is specific, but also having a universal dimension in trying to interpret, but also to link what is similar to in comparison to what is different. So it's a intellectual challenge, which is of course consistent with this jihad aqli, where the Muslims need to develop a deeper sense of the meaning of their existence, their rituals, and their behavior as religious believers. So we mentioned that this was already before also present, fasting for Jews and fasting for Christians. But quite an interesting other point also is that we have to also clarify, what are we fasting from? Are we only fasting from food and beverage? Is that only the fasting we are trying to practice? In reality, the practice of our fasting is not only on food and beverage, but it's also a fasting from ourselves. It is to refrain from ourselves, not only in the negative sense, which is, of course, every moment of the year, we have to refrain from negative instincts of our soul that would like to go into negative actions. But we also have to here refrain from our habits to believe that we are the leaders of our action and of our behavior and of our blessings. While to refrain from ourselves is actually to rediscover the priority of Allah as the reality that is really guiding and doing every action according to His holy science. So in refraining from ourselves, we are discovering His action. And of course, this is part also of the hadith when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that the value of fasting is among His science, His secrets. So we are discovering through fasting His secrets, His science, and also His action. He is acting through our fasting, which is a very special spiritual link, but also meditation to understand the deep value of fasting, which is not only food and beverage, but is also to discover a new action, which is a divinely led action, an action that is directly guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, having discovered this priority, we discover also the added value of life. because life is not only existence, life is not only eating or drinking, life is a presence, life is a action, life is a divine order. It is a Allah's will. So it is Allah will that creates the miracle of life, the blessing of life, and the blessing of action, and even the blessing among the actions of fasting, as we said previously. So this presence of Allah is something that we need to discover through our refraining from ourselves. So we discover His presence, His hadra, His reality, and His order, which has given life to everything through His order. When He says kun fayakun, He gives an order to be, and the reality comes into place. So the reality exists thanks to His will and thanks to His blessing and thanks to His order. So He gives through His holy presence the presence to reality and the presence of a blessed life. And through our fasting, we are also discovering how we are linked to Allah's will, Allah's science, Allah's unity, Allah's presence. Such as the attribute of Allah, Al-Ghani, which normally is translated as the rich, but it is actually the reality who is independent. He has no conditions. He is open to reality without any precondition, because He is free from any condition, and His will and His order and His presence gives the blessing of life to all reality, to the world, and also to human being. Now, how can we connect this discovery of the secrets of fasting, not only from eating and drinking, but also from discovering His presence, His order, His will, His science, in the field of dialogue? And the Holy Quran teaches us in at least three very beautiful stories how sometimes to refrain from words is fasting, or to be speechless is fasting. When one person is silent, he is fasting from words. And this happens at least 3 times in the Holy Quran. The first time, according to a chronological order of the prophets, is when Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam is informed of the killing of his son Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. And he responds to this with a term that is kazim, which is something that actually scholars have developed because is a condition where one has to overcome his possibility of being so angry because his son has died, and he overcomes this situation through a silence of emotions. He is speechless. He cannot express his sadness and his angry of how his other sons have mistreated his blessed son Yusuf alayhi salam. So there is this speechless a situation of fasting from emotions, from reactions, from being angry, or from expressing any negative or positive expression or reaction. A second history of the Holy Quran is the history of Prophet Zakaria alayhi salam, when he is in retreat and he requests Allah to help him find a legacy, find a heritage that can continue the holy message of prophecy. And Allah responds to his prayer by presenting and announcing the arrival of Prophet Yahya alayhi salam. And Prophet Zakaria requests a sign that might be a proof that this news is a good news for humanity. And the sign that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presents in the Holy Quran is Allah tukallim an-nas. He will not be able to speak to humanity. Prophet Zakaria will come back to his brethren, to his community, but he will not be able to speak for 3 nights. And this is the sign of, in some way, if you like, of fasting from words, of being impossible to express oneself in a different way that we just saw from Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam in comparison to the false news on Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam death. Here we find the Prophet Zakaria, who is speechless, without words, fasting for any expression for 3 nights as a sign of confirmation that he will have a legacy in Prophet Yahya. And the third story of the Holy Quran, we find it always again in Surah Maryam, which is Maryam alayhi salam, that is fasting from words. And when her parents come to her with some offenses, she points out her baby, saying that he will respond to their questions. And actually, the parents of Maryam, again, they use the same verb, which is كيف نكلم من كان في المهد صبيا. So they cannot believe that the responses to their questions will come from a boy that just is born. And this is the miracle of being speechless from Maryam. She's fasting from any kind of answer to questions or to offenses from her parents, and she actually is presenting her son Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam, that will give just after his birth the true and correct answers to the questions of the parents. And he will show his miracle as a person who is in somehow providing words, expression, answers to the fasting of his mother. Maryam is fasting from any answer, as well as Prophet Zakaria is speechless for 3 nights, as well as Prophet Yaqub is speechless in comparison to the false news of Prophet Yusuf death, or of the anticipation of the arrival of Prophet Yahya alayhi salam as a legacy to prophecy, or of the birth of Isa ibn Maryam that will give the words, will express the truth since his childhood, in comparison to the negative and false news of the parents of Maryam. So you see, there is a special link with the kalam. We fast from words, we try to express his words, we try to learn his truth, and this is the key of the recitation of the Holy Quran during Ramadan. During the evenings of Ramadan, during the nights of Taraweeh, all the Quran slowly is recited, and we listen and we recite and we read his holy words. That is the message of truth that inspire the presence of Allah, the will of Allah, the science of Allah, and allows every Muslim believer to discover this link with his science, with his presence, and with his holiness. So there is a special fasting of being speechless and of learning to read the words of revelation, the words of Allah in the Holy Quran. And this relation is a relation of blessing. We discover the blessing of Allah's word, of Allah's teachings, and his teaching provide every Muslim to have a wisdom and to have an inspiration for our actions as believers through this fasting process. And then these examples of Yaqub and Yusuf, of Zakaria and Yahya, of Maryam and Isa alayhim assalam, allows us also to in somehow open to a way of considering a dialogue also with Christians and Jews, because we have in common these prophets and these experiences, and it allows us to see and to share the negative situations when we have lost any hope for the future. When we as Zakaria or as Yaqub, we are afraid that there will be no legacy, there will be no heritage, there will be no son and no future, while the reality is that there is a future, there is a legacy, there is a continuity, there is a tradition that allows every believer to be linked from the roots of existence to the fruits of existence. So we can discuss about this also with our Jewish and Christian brothers and sisters, because it is a way also to develop interreligious dialogue through some commonalities, through some common persons that the Holy Quran teaches us. And of course, this has also a very great impact also in the West, because interreligious dialogue is a great occasion to overcome the religious illiteracy, the lack of knowledge of what is Allah, religion, rituals, symbols. And this occasion is also an occasion to rediscover the added value of religion, of Islam, also in comparison to Christianity and to Judaism, and to show the value of sacredness, of holiness as an inspirational perspective in life. We are alive, we are persons of responsibility because we are inspired by the holiness of Allah's presence that is discovered during Ramadan, through fasting, through this dialogue also of the legacy of the prophets in being the champions of Allah's message to humanity, the remembrance of Allah's holiness and presence to humanity as a value of life. And so this is an important inspiration also for the West, where sometimes the secular dimension has allowed to forget this value of sacredness, this value of the divine, this value of holiness, and life becomes an existential, consumeristic, materialistic, individualistic reality, where the deeper sense of the link between mankind, humanity, and Allah is forgotten. So interreligious dialogue provides also the remembrance of this link, the remembrance of this value, and also the inspiration for how our intentions and our goals are in somehow connected to spirituality and to the true dimension of religion. And so with this approach, interreligious dialogue provides an inspiration also for social cohesion and for peaceful coexistence, because it inspires fraternity, it inspires cooperation, it inspires respect and tolerance, and it inspires the cooperation for truth, justice, and peace. And this is something that, of course, is present also in Judaism and in Christianity, and that can allow us to implement and to the renewal of a fraternity also as citizens, also as believers in Europe, avoiding that materialistic or individualistic or relativism increases the lack of remembrance of Allah, of our identity, of the sacredness of life, and of peace as a holy dimension of our goal for the actions in our fields of society in the West as well as in the East. So this is my conclusion, hoping that this will provide also a proactive interpretation where no hatred, no violence, no ideological extremism, no discrimination, no double standards should be taking place, but where we have to try to find new categories in the grammar of holiness and in the language of the Quran to be inspired by the words of revelation, by the words of truth, and share the blessing of Allah's presence during this Ramadan through fasting, but also after Ramadan, in order to be champions for peace and for knowledge as Muslims, together with our brothers and sisters in other religious communities. I thank you very much. I hope and wish you all a very blessed Ramadan in the evenings during your prayers, in the days during your fasting, and may Allah keep us united with wisdom in these difficult times, because we need to really develop enlightenment and the renewal of the quality of life for the future of mankind, inshallah.